All right, let's see if I remember how to do this. If you're new here, my name is Justin. I make videos where I go through some aspects of my budgeting process. I have not been making content in the last couple months because I've been focused on higher priority things in my life, work, and mainly school. As of this weekend, my final term of school finished, and so now I'm just waiting for final grades to post, my degree to be conferred. Barring any catastrophic grading issues, which I'm not foreseeing being a problem, I am officially done. So that means I get a lot of my time after work back, which means I can focus on making content again. I don't know what my schedule is going to be. I know before taking my break, I tried to do weekly. I also tried to do biweekly. So I'm going to kind of leave the frequency up in the air for now. I don't want to get burned out doing this, kind of like I did earlier in the year. It kind of felt like an obligation to make this content. And that's not what this is about, certainly for me. So I'm going to kind of play by ear, see how I feel, and then go from there. But I do realize that since it has been quite some time since I last made a video, a lot of things probably look a little bit different if you remember from my last video that I made. So we can go through a little bit of what's different. I've made some tweaks as I've gone. I've continued to maintain my budget, allocating the money that comes into my account on a regular basis. So nothing in the way of my budget suffered. I just did everything behind the scenes. But you will notice a couple new categories. I have a transportation category now, or group. Now that I am no longer paying a car payment, I want to be able to kind of see what transportation costs me. So I've moved everything related to my car for transportation under this category group. I also added a pet stuff group. This is something that I created when I was dealing with all kinds of vet stuff with my dog. So I created this to kind of track his expenses separately from other things. I also added a giving category. I want to start kind of giving charitably. I haven't figured out kind of what I'm going to do with that. So we'll see. But I created that to use in the future. And then I added quite a few things to my emergencies category group. So the one thing that I learned last month when I went through all those vet bills, which has totaled, last month and this month combined, I think is probably somewhere around $2,500 to $3,000. It's great to have an emergency fund because that really saved my butt when that first $2,000 bill came due. I was able to pay it, no problem. But what I realized is the money that I've been setting aside, yes, has been earmarked for emergencies, but I've been really focusing it towards income replacement and not necessarily emergency coverage. So on top of the 6-month income replacement goal that I have for next year, I also included other specific emergency fund items, one for pet emergencies, one for vehicle emergencies, and then one for health emergencies. I think those three really cover the gamut of a lot of the things that would be emergencies for me in my life. These are kind of like arbitrary numbers. They feel good to me. I don't know how long it would take me to get to those markers. Those will be future goals, I think, for me. But yeah, so I basically expanded my emergencies category group to include other things. That way, if an emergency on my car happens or another emergency with the dog happens, I'm not taking from the money that I'm going to need to cover income if I lose my job. So that is the biggest change, I think, to my budget, which means I'm going to have to kind of incorporate those in my goals in the next year or two. But with that said, I got paid today, my second paycheck of December. Fortunately for me, this is a magic month, so I get 3 paychecks this month. I budget everything based on 2 paychecks, which means my third and final paycheck, which I anticipate hitting my account, I believe on the 30th or the 31st, one of those 2 days. I'm going to use probably mainly to cover goals that I have. But today I got 1926.14. I get paid biweekly. This is my normal paycheck. And I guess I just realized probably one of the biggest things outside of my budget that changed since my last video was I'm in a new position. And this position came with a demotion, voluntary demotion, which also included a dock and pay. So I work in data analytics. I also work in government, local government. And I had been in my previous position a little over 2 years. I loved the work, but sometimes the work that you do is not fun when you don't have a good team around you or leadership. And so I made the decision a couple months ago, I think back in October, to voluntarily demote myself to a position that I held prior to my promotion earlier this year, but with a completely different team, a completely different entity within my same kind of local government entity. So I still work in data analytics. I am on the IT side now, supporting the IT department for my employer. I'm not enjoying this job, so this is probably not going to be a long-lasting job. But, you know, it is what it is. I've been looking for other employment. I'm trying to get out of government. It doesn't really pay well for the type of work that I'm doing and the skills that are required. But it's been rough trying to break into corporate, trying to get a remote job in data analytics. Not only is everybody trying to get remote jobs, but data analytics is something that's growing rapidly. Also, you know, a lot of jobs are being outsourced to AI, and that's making it really difficult to get a job right now. And so, yeah, continuing to apply, seeing what's out there, not really getting any bites, which really sucks considering I just devoted 9.5 months to getting a master's degree to hopefully get a better foot in the door. So we'll see how that works out. But that is enough talking. Let's go ahead and get into budgeting. So the first thing I always do is go into the future month and budget or rent in the next month. Earlier this month, I already, like I said, this is the second paycheck of the month of December. So I've already put aside half of my rent. I don't know what my next month's rent is going to be exactly. So when that happens, I usually just do a half fund of $960. We'll just cover that. I also have some underfunded items in this month. So groceries, power is showing underfunded, but it's, in the winter, I don't spend as much in power. So $65 should cover it, which means once January hits, I can snooze this goal. If I don't fund my groceries for January in this paycheck, I'm just going to have to do it in next paycheck. So I'm just going to go ahead and fund it now. Gas. I don't think I'm going to need gas money this month for December. I still have about 3/4 of a tank, 2 weeks left in the month. I only go into the office once a week. And I don't do a whole lot of driving around generally. So I think what I'm going to do is I will fund $50 in gas, but I'll do it in December and just have it roll over. We'll take care of that in December. I'm a little short in YNAB for some reason. Either I didn't update the target or the target got wonky throughout the year, but I'm 19 cents short. And my YNAB is going to get paid out on the 17th. So I'm going to go ahead and fund that. So we'll go back here. We'll take care of this overspending here in a second. But I am going to fund $50 in gas. And then my next thing is every paycheck, I set aside money for various things. I make it a habit to do it. And so we'll go ahead and take care of some of those. The rent, that's already taken care of. Household, I put $25 every paycheck aside. For dog food, I put $50 every paycheck. And then for dining out, I put $50 every paycheck and $50 for discretionary. That takes care of all of that. I don't think I have the last thing I want to take care of before I cover this overspending is vehicle maintenance. So I have this vehicle maintenance. I don't know if I had this the last time I created a video or not, but I created this vehicle routine maintenance category so that I'm not covering, oil changes, tire rotations, air filters, things like that out of vehicle emergencies or just other areas in my budget. So I created this to kind of cover that. I took from this, I had $1,000 in here before my dog emergency happened. And to avoid taking so much from my emergency fund, I took about 900 from this category. And then the last couple of paychecks, I've been kind of slowly building it back up. I am due for an oil change, so I need at least enough for an oil change, maybe a tire rotation. I'm hoping it's less than 100. But what I want to do is I want to bring this up to 100. So what is that? 2683. Hey, I'm not a math major. That was cool. So that leaves me with 514.12 to budget. Let's go ahead and go to this overspent category. So this is pet stuff. My dog now has several routine medications he takes every day because of what happened to him. So today, earlier this afternoon, I had to get some refills on those medications. And so what I do, and this works for me just because it's hard for me to know exactly how much medication is going to be and some of the other things that he needs. So I use a pet holding. This is completely separate from his pet emergency money, but I fill this pet holding money up, and anytime I need to buy medications, supplements, pet supplies, like I had to get a step thing so that he can get into the car now, because he can't jump into the car, even a very low sitting car now. So I had to buy a step in order for him to kind of get up into the car safely. So, things like that. I don't know how much those things cost. I just needed to get them. So now I use this pet holding. I put money into there, and anytime I need to pull for pills and supplies and stuff like that, it comes directly from this category. So that is what I'm going to do to cover this overspent category. And that leaves me again with $514.12. So normally, prior to taking a hiatus, really all of my extra money was going towards my emergency fund income replacement. But now that I have to kind of budget not only for my own emergencies, but any additional emergencies for him. And then also I need to make sure I'm funding, supplies and medications for him. I'm having to kind of bounce my money between emergency fund for me, emergency fund for him, and supplies. Additionally, it looks like I am probably going to be moving in February. Long story short, I've been in my current apartment for going on 4 years now. I think 3 or 4 leases. I have the last couple years have been paying hundreds of dollars a month over market rate for what my apartment is worth and what other people are paying for similar 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartments in my complex. And so I'm up for renewal. And they sent me the renewal offer at the same rate I've been paying for years. And now that I'm to a point to where stability in my rent is not as important to me, I went to them and said, look, I've been a long-term resident. I moved in. I was one of the first people to move into this place. They were still building it when I moved in. Um, so I'm probably the longest tenured resident here. I have been an awesome resident. I've never paid late. I've always paid on time. Um, but they refuse for some reason to lower my rent to market rate. They also, um, last week when I went to go talk to them and say, hey, look, these are my options. I'm either going to stay where I'm at, move to a different unit, or move to a different property. That's basically it. They said, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. That's when they came back and said, hey, we can't match a rent rate for your current unit, but you can move to a 2-bedroom unit. Or, a 1-bedroom unit if you want. But in that span of time, the week that it took them to kind of get an answer, they, surprisingly, not really surprisingly, I kind of expected it, they increased their market rates. So what used to be a $300 or $400 savings, right? If I move to a different 1-bedroom unit, which make it make sense. If I move to another 1-bedroom unit, you're okay me paying, $300 or $400 less for that unit, but you can't honor that price for my current unit and not make me have to move. Again, make it make sense. Additionally, moving to a 2-bedroom unit was going to save me about $100 or $200. And there was one right down literally 2 buildings down. So it would have been really close for me to move. Well, in the week that it took them to get an answer, the 1-bedroom units are now only like $100 cheaper. The only 1-bedroom units available are clear across the property, so I'd have to move all the way across the property. The unit that was a 2-bedroom, or actually it was a 3-bedroom unit, kind of next door, for like $100, $200 less, is gone now. And the 2-bedroom units are now like in line or maybe $50 less than what I'm paying. So I've lost out on significant savings because they've sat on their ass and fought me on trying to get a fair rate. And so it looks like in order for me to get something fair, I'm going to have to move. And that was not something I was anticipating on doing. So what I more than likely am going to have to do is now start, shoveling money into a wish farm item, moving fees. I don't anticipate moving far, so I don't really need to spend a ton of money on a moving truck, just something local. But I wasn't anticipating having to move. I was anticipating staying here, another couple years. But they are making it difficult for me to save money because they don't want to lose money. And so probably this coming weekend, I will be apartment shopping, which means now I need money for deposits, application fees, security deposits, pet deposits, first month's rent, my firstborn child, all the things that go into getting a new apartment. And then I also need to kind of save money to move all of my stuff. I also have a lot of things, like almost half of my property is still living in Oregon in a storage unit. It's lived there since 2021. I haven't had the money to go get it. So more than likely, I will probably have to make a trip up to Oregon to get all of my stuff down here. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying that this money I am going to not put towards emergency fund. I'm going to put towards moving fees. So what that means, and I guess I can probably clarify. So I have 2 more payments for my education benefits. My 2025 goal was to get my emergency fund to 3 months of income replacement, $9,000. I was there. In fact, I was well into my 4th month. And then I had to kind of shuffle money out of there to pay for the dog emergency fund, emergency stuff. So I have to get to the 3-month emergency fund goal that I have by the end of the year. I have $17.51.56 left to fund that. I have $1,775 worth of education benefits coming in the next month, or the next 2 or 3 weeks, which will cover all of that. So all of the money that I get from the education benefits are going to go into that. That way I'll have my 3-month emergency fund goal done. And then that 514 just went into moving, more than likely because I will not have to use my 3rd paycheck of December for any bills. That entire paycheck will probably go into my moving fund, which means I'll have somewhere around $2,500 set aside for moving. I don't know if that's going to be enough. We'll have to kind of see. The biggest expense is going to be first month's rent. Depends on where I move and how much that ends up being. Certainly it'll cover any deposits, admin fees, application fees, moving fees, things like that. So we'll have to see. I may have to shuffle some money in January to go towards moving as well, but we'll play that by ear. So yeah, that pretty much sums up this video. Thank you for those who have stuck around. In fact, my viewer subscriber number has increased just a little bit since when I stopped making videos. So thanks to those of you who have stuck around through this hiatus. Thanks to those who are new within the last couple months for sticking around, even though I haven't put anything out. Yeah, so I'll see you in the next video.